it's Megan here with Makewells, and today I'm going to be sharing my art journaling process as I create this spread. So I will be talking all about my process as I work, as well as the supplies I use and lots of other ramblings as I create for about an hour. So I hope you enjoy the video. If you have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comments below.
Okay, off I go, starting out with these Dr. P.H. Martin's Concentrated Radiant Watercolors. I am working in an Arteza watercolor book, and I have a large round brush. So I'm starting out by just putting in color. I am going to fill up the entire spread here with color pretty quickly. I like to get this background layer in without really thinking about it. I just start slapping on color. So I'm using this true blue to begin with, and now I'm going to add some of the chartreuse. These colors are so bright. So if you are like me and you love bright, happy colors, you have to try these watercolors. They're a little bit pricey, but you can buy 1 or 2 bottles just to try them out and just start adding to your collection. But I'm still painting, I'm still getting in this background. Like I said, I'm going to fill up the whole background. So usually I just put patches of color here and there before switching from one color to the next. So now I've got this beautiful, vibrant cherry red, and I'm going to fill in these areas. You can see in some spots I'm letting it be super light, but there are some areas where I'm going to be a little bit more vibrant. So I'm almost done washing this in. Just so you know, this is real time right now. So I have filled up my background in about 2 minutes. Like I said, I like to work fast. I like to get to it, but maybe I should slow down and just enjoy the process a little more. I don't know. This is just the way I work. But that's filled in. So now I am going to splatter. And since I still have that wet background, look at what those watercolors are doing. It is so beautiful the way they bleed. You can't paint things like this on purpose. They just have to happen on their own. So when I splatter, I am just letting the paint do what the paint wants to do. Now I have zero patience waiting for things to dry, so I'm going to give this a little bit of help and just press down on these super wet spots with a paper towel. I just do not like waiting. I could get out a blow dryer and help it out, but this is just easiest because I have a roll of paper towels sitting right next to me. And now that I've got that a little bit drier, it's not totally dry, but now that I have that a little bit drier, I'm going to get out this golden high flow acrylic. This is my favorite acrylic for line work, and I love to use a super small round brush. And this is how I get started painting my flowers. I shouldn't say never, but I very rarely take a pencil and sketch anything. Oops, I dripped a little black paint there, but that's okay. Who cares? It's an art journal. It's supposed to be fun. But anyways, I rarely use a pencil and sketch things first. I like to just jump right in and paint. So I'm starting here in a nice little spot on the right side, and I'm just going to start painting my first flower. I started with the center, and I just gave it some little lines, little whatevers. And now I'm adding smaller petals that have some little folds over to begin. Now, because I didn't wait because I didn't wait for my paper to fully dry, I am getting a little bit of bleeding, but I like it. I don't care. This is my art journal and I just want to have fun. So all of those imperfections just add to that. And I'll keep going with this flower, adding a second layer behind. This is kind of how I like to start with flowers. I don't really have a certain kind of flower in mind. I just start painting one. So it's make-believe flowers a lot of the times. Other times I'm thinking of a dahlia or a peony or a daisy. But right now I'm just starting with the simple formula of draw something in the center, draw some petals, and then layer some petals into the back. And again, this is real time, so this is the speed that I'm painting. I will have to speed it up a little bit coming up as I paint in some more flowers, because I do want to fit this in an hour. And I think I want this flower to be a bit bigger, so I'm going to add one final layer of petals here in the back. And I like my first flower. It's cute. It's in a good spot to get started. And there we go. So I am speeding it up now just a little bit to make sure I can squeeze this all into an hour. I'm not sure exactly how long this piece took me, but I know it was a little bit more than an hour. So I'm adding in some more flowers. I've got some leaves that I'm putting in behind that big flower, kind of peeking out. And now I'm drawing in a flower. It's kind of from the side. I don't know. I'm just going with it. Totally making it up as I go. But as I move down here below my first flower, I do have the general shape of a peony in mind. Is that how you say that? Peony? Always sounds so odd to me. And when I see the flower name, I always want to say peony. I don't know. Let me know which way is the correct way. But anyways, I am still painting that peony flower, and I love to paint these from my imagination. It's just a little bit of a simple formula where I have the center with petals kind of folding in towards each other, and then my petals open up as it comes away from the center. So I can paint these in a lot of different ways without looking at a picture. And here we have some more leaves. And let them go behind that first flower. I think I want a few more petals up here, so I'm going to pop up to this one in the far right and just add 3 more. So I'm not really sure where my composition is going to go, but I'm just going to move over here to the left side and paint in another flower. Again, this is just one from my imagination. I am doing the same thing. Painted a little center, just has some kind of dots making a circle, and now I'm painting some petals. So I did some smaller skinny ones first, and now I'm just going to do one layer of these bigger petals behind them. So this looks like a nice spot for another flower. I'm gonna make these skinnier petals, sort of daisy-ish, but again, it's just a make-believe flower. I don't know what kind of flower it's supposed to be, but you can draw or paint petals in like any shape and they'll still look like a flower. So that's the fun thing about flowers, is that there's really no way to mess up a flower as long as you have things that kind of look like petals, then you're good to go. And a couple more leaves here, just kind of going right off the page. And I guess this looks like a good spot for another flower. Like I said, I'm just winging it, which is the fun part because I don't like to have any plan when I get started. I just want to see what happens. So I'll put another little flower in here, and I am going to leave a good amount of negative space though. So this might be my last flower. I'm not quite sure, but I'm definitely going to leave a lot of that background. I really want to mix up my flowers. So this one here is just going to have some kind of like square rectangle-ish petals, and I'm going to do a lot of layers of them. Sort of like I did with the dahlia-ish flower, but with different shaped petals. And painting in here in the bind, it's a little tricky, I won't lie. Things get a little wonky, but I don't care. I'll just go ahead now and add a few more leaves coming off towards the far left of my piece, and I think that might be it. I think. Okay, that's not it. I need one more flower. Still just a little bit too much negative space, so I'm gonna add one more flower in here. And I'm doing a different shape again than I've done so far, so I really try to mix it up with my flower shapes. This guy's kind of a little bit less realistic looking, and I'm going to add a few little folds in my petals, try and give it a little bit of dimension. And I really think this is going to be my last flower. I'm going to see how I feel. And I'll add a leaf here, kind of connecting the two so that flower is not just floating out there by itself. And yeah, I think that's going to be my foreground for now. So now I've got out my craft paint. It's Deco Art Americana. It's black. I like to use this when I'm going to do larger areas of black. It's a matte acrylic, so I don't get that gloss, and that is going to make it easier for me, at least for me, when I want to use my gel pens on top of it. And it's going to keep my book from sticking as much. The more acrylic-y acrylic, the glossy ones, they can cause my book to stick. Even when I add like a matte medium on top, it'll still do that, and I have to keep just pieces of paper, like computer paper, in between my pages. So I like to use, as you know, for the most part, craft paints for any of these large areas, just to avoid that. And honestly, I kind of don't know what to say here. I'm just painting. I don't know how much black I'm going to do. I just like to do this to break up the page and add contrast, because I love doing like white patterns on top of the black in all these areas. So I am just gonna go with it. I don't know how much I'm gonna add in. We'll see. I did speed this up a little because, I don't know, it can get kind of boring to just watch me paint areas of black. I'm going to do some leaf silhouettes over here coming off the page behind this flower. So another thing I like to do is contrast the lighter flowers with some silhouettes. So I'll keep painting this here. I like to kind of leave the edges rough. I don't like to have like super defined edges in those patches of black. A couple more silhouette leaves up here, and I'm just bringing it off the page at the top. And that'll be it for the black. I'm going to get out my concentrated watercolors again. And I am going to start putting color into the other areas of the negative space around my flowers. So I'm getting much bolder with my colors now. They're not going to be as watered down. and it's going to start pushing back my background. Now, if you guys have seen me work before, you're going to know that this is just kind of my thing. I love to just go back and forth between the positive space and the negative space. And so sometimes, though, I feel like I can get in a bit of a rut with this, where the way I'm creating becomes a little bit predictable and can start getting a little boring for me if I don't mix it up. Boring is probably not the right word because I'm never bored when I'm painting, but I think you know what I mean. Like, I just need to force myself sometimes to mix it up, and today I'm not really doing that. I'm just kind of sticking a little bit more with this little formula I've created. I'm sure I'm going to do some more unpredictable things as I go, but I'm also thinking that this probably isn't a way that you've created before, so it's, you know, hopefully not boring to you to see what I'm doing. So I'll come over here. I'm going to add this nice true blue on top of the chartreuse, and now I'm getting like a more of a nice deep green, and that's contrasting really nicely with the chartreuse that's showing there in the petals. So I'm just going to keep bopping around, wash that out a little bit to kind of fade out the edges. I don't put this layer in everywhere usually, but I'm going to do a lot of the negative space. I definitely am going to do it up against my flowers and leaves, because the whole point of it is getting those, you know, the foreground to stand out a lot more, because those lighter colors are going to pop out at us and the darker colors are going to push that area back. And I'm going to speed it up a little bit here, and I'm going to be honest, I'm speeding it up because I'm doing the same thing. I don't really know what to say at times because I'm used to just painting along and not talking. So I am speeding this part of the video up just to kind of get through it. You can still see what I'm doing. I'm not going too fast, but I'll just continue with this negative space. Putting that cherry red on top of the dark blue is going to start to make a nice violet color. And this side I need to get a lot bolder with to make that stand out. And I just kind of let the edges just fade out. I'm not super concerned with it being like a nice, you know, smooth blend. I think you can tell that I'm not really the neatest painter when I'm working in my art journal, because I just think the mess is what makes it fun and what makes it unpredictable. Because even when I go back through my art journals, I see things and I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool, that's interesting. Look at the way the paint did that there, and, you know, so on and so forth. So I just think being messy is just adds to that. I'm going to push this back even more, add that true blue on top, and you can see I am still just working with these three colors. I haven't gotten out any other, oh wait, that is not true. I did add olive green. That's that a little bit of a deeper green. So I have 4 now. I lied. But anyway, so I have bopped over here to the right, and now I'm drawing in some new flowers with my watercolors again. So I've got my blue out, and I've got a nice little tiny brush, my favorite. And I haven't mentioned this, but I said I'm drawing, and I know I'm using paint and I'm using a paintbrush, so you might be thinking, no, you're not, you're painting. But I think of drawing as, I can use any tool, any supply to draw. It's sort of like a mindset. So I'm in drawing mode right now. I just happen to be drawing with watercolors and a paintbrush. And that's just kind of the way I think about it, especially when I'm just putting the shapes in. If I'm doing all sorts of details and shading in large areas, then I'm a little bit more over in painting mode. This is just the way I think. I don't know why, but just letting you guys in on it, where my brain is going. I'll take this flower a little bit behind that other one. Putting the flowers like in front of and behind each other instead of having them just kind of float out in outer space by themselves really helps my work build up that dimension. And I don't know how many times I've said dimension yet. I probably have said it a lot, but I'm not sure. But I love dimension in my work. I love layers. I love the contrast, the push and pull between bright colors and light colors against the darker and deeper or muted colors. So that's something I'm always trying to be aware of, and it just kind of comes to me instinctively. So I feel like mixing it up. I'm going to get my medium round brush now, and I'm going to put in some blue silhouettes of leaves. So this kind of little vine coming out from that new flower and just going right off the page. I'll have the second leaf here and make that a little fatter. And I'll have one kind of just peeking out behind this other leaf. Okay, I'm bopping over here, and I'm going to do the same thing with these blue silhouettes for these leaves coming out over here on the left side. I'll do a few more than I did down on the right. And this is another thing that kind of just always comes to me instinctively, is that I usually don't do something only once. So if I add in, like these silhouettes, then I'll do it somewhere else. Sometimes 2 times, sometimes 3 times. Same thing with, you'll see when I go into the black, usually I repeat something that I do in there. Now I'm adding a second flower. So you can see I'm just kind of balancing things out. I think it helps with movement. Your eye doesn't get stuck. I don't know, that's a whole nother principles of design chat. I can't do that right now. But this flower is, I don't know, it's sort of dahlia-ish. I got those, petals on the inside kind of closing in on each other. But for the most part, it's just another, in my head flower. I don't want you to think that I only draw flowers out of my head, because that's not true. I do look at photos of flowers and references, but mostly just to inspire me. I'm never trying to completely replicate it, because like I said, there's just no way to mess up a flower. So if my petal's a little bit off that way or this way from the picture, I'm just kind of like, who cares? Because it's a flower. It looks like a flower. So, like I said, I do use references, but once I've kind of gotten down the general, formation of a flower, I don't have to look as much. I can kind of just think about it in my head. Okay, what does it generally do? What does the center kind of look like? How are the petals formed? Are they skinny? Are they fat? How layers. And so I kind of get that stuck in my head after, drawing and painting them so many times. So that's what I've been doing in this whole piece. It's just kind of, I got it stored up in my memory on kind of the construction of the different types of flowers. So this is where I'm at. I am going to start putting in another layer of color in my negative space that's going to help these new flowers stand out. So the new flowers were painted on top of some of the darker areas that I'd already pushed back. So now with this next layer of color, I'm pushing the background further back. So I'm starting to get like flowers that are out in front and then flowers that are going to end up being in the middle. And then I will have my background. I sometimes will do this with like 3 or 4 layers of flowers. So no idea where it's going today, but we'll find out. And I've still only got those 4 colors, the chartreuse, the true blue, the cherry red, and the olive green. And that's all I've stuck with for this whole piece. Sometimes I'll do an entire piece in just 1 color or 2 colors. And then other times it's like, you know, a rainbow threw up on my piece. So it just kind of depends on the mood I'm in. And honestly, it kind of depends on how lazy I'm feeling. Sometimes I just want to paint and I don't want to have to reach for another color, so I just don't get one out. I'm just being honest with you. So I'll put in just a little bit more of this negative space before I go in for my next step, which I already know what I'm going to be doing, which is I'm going to start addressing those big blobs of black. I love a Uniball Signo gel pen for my white. I have yet to find a better one, so if you have a better option, please let me know. These do clog a bit, which is, you know, can be frustrating, but when I get them brand new, I try to take good care of them, keep the cap on, yada, yada, yada. But if you have a better gel pen that doesn't do that, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, this has been my favorite now for like 12 years. Don't buy any other white gel pens. But what I'm doing now is just adding some fun stuff in the black. In this negative space, I'm just going to do all sorts of things. So one thing I love to do are mandala shapes. And mandalas are just circular shapes where whatever you do in the concentric, is that the word concentric? I think so. Circle, you just repeat all the way around it. Now, if you've never seen me draw before, because I've switched over to a pen, you're probably looking at the way I'm holding my pen, like, what is she doing? I've always held a pen and a pencil funny. They tried to fix me in kindergarten with those like pencil grips, and I was very stubborn. So this is just how I hold my pen. I've had emails before, believe it or not, where people are asking me if I hold my pen a certain way because, you know, it helps me draw better or something. And I'm like, no, I just hold my pen weird. So that is my little claw. Now, sometimes when I'm working in these areas of black on top of the Dr. P.H. Martin's concentrated watercolors, I can still get some bleed through. So that's the thing with these watercolors, is that they are so saturated that there's really only one white that I have found that won't bleed through. And I'll be using that in a little bit, but it's the Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. The name kind of says it all. But right now, I'm not getting that bleed through on top of this matte black, so that's kind of cool. I'm just filling in these little areas of the mandala. A lot of times I just draw the general shape and then I'll go back in for details. Sometimes I get bored of doing it, so I'll just walk away for a bit and come back and work on it a little bit more after I've done something else on the page. But for the most part, I really like doing this, and they kind of find their way into almost all of my art. Okay, let's zoom in on the claw. I just want to show you up close that I just take these designs to the edge of the black. So I'm not extending them into the watercolor at all. And I think it's really fun because it kind of makes them look like they're just peeking out or glowing out of this deep, dark area of negative space. I'm going back in with some details. Not sure how big I'm going to make it, but do these little dots in here. It does get a little tricky to kind of figure out where to put things when I start running, you know, off the edges of the black and I'm only doing part of the circle. So it can be a little tricky to keep my circular shape accurate. But if it gets a little wonky, you guys probably know that I don't care. So again, this is my art journal. So I'm just trying to have fun. I'm not trying to be perfect with anything that I'm doing. So I want it to look cool, but I also want to just enjoy myself and not think and not be concerned with stuff like that. So I don't ever really feel like I mess up. But I mean, of course, there are times where I put down some colors and I'm like, ooh, that's just ugly. Or I do a flower, I'm like, I'm not feeling that. But I always find a way to just kind of cover it up and keep moving. And a lot of times, those, you know, quote unquote mess ups or areas I don't like, when I fix them, it makes whatever I was doing kind of even cooler. So now I'm adding in some polka dots. I love polka dots even more than I love mandala designs in my areas of negative space. And I love to draw them with this little half drop pattern. And I am going to fill up the entire space that's remaining in this patch down here on the left. Then I'm going to bop over to this area on the top right, and I'm going to do some circle dots. I'm not filling in my polka dots. I'm just having some empty circles, and I'm doing it in the same pattern, around the same size. I will be filling in all of the black space. I'm not going to leave any of it. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but I just already know today that I'm in the mood to fill the entire space. So I'll be mixing up what I do throughout it, but doing something in all of the areas with the white. And this is looking kind of cool. I'm really liking how my pattern is just kind of going right under the stem of that flower. So I don't know, I like that spot. And I will move up here to this little area of black that's left. And I'm going to go ahead and create another mandala. I think I'm going to stop talking for a minute. I'm kind of running out of things to say. So I'm going to give you guys just a little break to sit and listen to the music while I finish this little area. Okay, I'm gonna switch up supplies and get out my Tombow dual brush pens. I love to use these to add shading inside my flowers. So what I do is I just start putting in some color in areas where I want it to have a little bit of shadow. So I'm gonna put down that turquoise and now the pink on top. And then what I'll do is take my water brush and I'm going to start to blend that in. So on this paper, it doesn't give me the smoothest blend, but it does get washy enough. So I fade that in, and then a lot of times I kind of give it a little bit of subtle lines as it goes towards the edges of the flowers. So I find this technique works a lot better on Canson watercolor paper or in my Strathmore art journal or even on Canson mixed media paper. But in this art journal by Arteza, it doesn't blend as much, but it's doing it enough for me here. So I will go through into all of my flowers and leaves with this technique. So here in this one, I have a lot of little spots to fill in since I have so many layers of petals. And I'm always trying to think of what petals are in front and what petals are behind. So I'm putting in just a little bit of shadow in those areas that are behind and underneath. And then I got my water brush and I will go ahead and do the same thing, washing this in, making it look a lot more like watercolor than marker. Okay, and I'm going to stop talking again for just a little bit. You guys can just watch along because I'm going to be doing the same thing in my next flower, except I'll be using a lighter turquoise. Okay, so I'm popping back in. I'm going to go ahead and add just a bit of a darker turquoise here because it wasn't giving me quite the oomph as I wanted. I can always go back and do that on top of areas I've washed the color in. I did not give it time to dry, but usually I do give it a little bit more time to dry, but it was just fine. Doesn't really mess up my markers because they are water-based markers after all. And there's that flower. And I'm bopping over here to this one, adding some magenta into this flower, doing the same thing. Just gonna put it in areas where I want there to be shadow. If you notice, I put it in at the edge of that petal because it is behind another flower. So I do want to give it dimension there as well. I'm taking a little bit of a talking break again. I'm actually kind of curious, and I'd love for you guys to let me know in the comments. Do you like me talking non-stop, or do you want some breaks where I just shut up? I'm really serious. I would just love to know your feedback on that. So, like I said, let me know in the comments. But I'm going to be quiet here, and you guys can just watch along. I'm getting out my golden high flow acrylic again, and I'm gonna add line work starting from the left and coming right because I don't like to worry about my hand getting, stuck in the paint and smudging it as I go, the opposite way. And I just went ahead and took a paper towel and dried things up a little bit because I don't feel like waiting and I don't want there to be too much bleeding. But I'm going back now into all of my black flowers and leaves, and I'm going to add some detailed line work. I notice now from this angle that my lovely thumb is blocking a lot of this, but as I move to the right, I think that will fix itself. So sorry about my knuckles and my thumb. At least I have my nails painted this time. I try to make them look nice, you guys, but it's so hard to keep up with them. That's a whole nother conversation. But anyway, so like I said, line work throughout all the flowers. And I have sped it up a little bit here, but there are times when I like to really, really slow down and have much thinner and neater lines. And other times I just feel like painting quickly. So that's what I'm doing today is I'm not taking a ton of time and being super careful. I'm just putting in some quick expressive line work into those flowers and leaves. Oh, blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry, I've been talking so long. I have never done a video this long. So I'm running out of things to say. I just want to paint. So maybe you just want to watch again. So I'm going to work through all these flowers, all these leaves that are outlined in black from left to right. And if I have anything to say in between there, I'll pop back in. Okay, I'm back. I've got my Tombow dual brush pens out again, and I'm using a light pink, and I'm gonna go back into a lot of areas of the negative space, adding some simple yet fun little patterns. Of course, I started out with my beloved polka dots. And one thing I do think about while I'm working, I've already talked about repetition, how if I do something in one area of the piece, I like to repeat it somewhere else. Well, when I do that, I also like to make it different at the same time. So I'm doing polka dots, but now they're in color and they're larger. So I'm repeating the theme, but I'm adding variation. And I'm going to keep that going over here, adding some smaller polka dots, but also in pink, into this area of negative space. As you can probably tell by now, I am a more is more artist. So it's not that I don't know when to stop, it's just that I don't really want to stop. So I'm going to fill a lot of these areas of blank space. Now I'm going to bop way over here to the right, and with my turquoise dual brush pen, I'm going to add just some simple little plus signs as a pattern. I'm doing it as a half drop repeat again. That's usually what I like to do. And then I'll go over here and I'm just going to add some vertical lines. I'm going to mix up the width and how far spaced apart they are because I like to just keep it interesting. So I'm bopping over here with my turquoise still. I'm continuing my polka dot theme, but I'm mixing it up by adding them here in turquoise, and they're a little bit smaller. So I'll put these in throughout here. I love how it turns more green when I get on top of that chartreuse. And now I'm just going to wash them out a little bit, make them a little bit more subtle in the background there. And I'm popping over here to the right. I keep saying popping over here, bopping over this way, that way, whatever. But you can see I'm adding in a mandala now with my dual brush pen. So I'm keeping the theme alive, but making it different. And I'll add some details in there. A little bit more stuff. Not sure where I want to end this one. Triangular shapes. And there, that's about it. So it's time for my secret weapon, my Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. It's not really secret, but this is my favorite white. It is the only white that will not bleed on top of the Dr. P.H. Martin's concentrated watercolors. So they are so vibrant and so concentrated that this truly is the only white I have found that does not bleed. And it only comes in this little bottle. And what I like to do is just put a little bit in the cap and be able to just kind of dip in there as I go. And what I'm doing is just adding white highlights now to all of my flowers and leaves that I've done with the black. This is truly where I just think it comes alive. These flowers just really start to stand out. And so I rarely ever skip this step. It's usually always in my work if I'm, working in this way. So like I said, I'll go in, add some highlights here and there. Don't really have a specific formula to this. I do like to try and get it around the edges to really make those pop against the background. I'm going to speed it up here just a little bit more because I want to be able to fit this in an hour, and I'm going to be doing the same thing in every flower and leaf that I've done with the black outline. So I'm going to take another little talking break and you can just watch along. Okay, so I think I have all my flowers and leaves with the white. But I'm going to keep the white out, and I'm just going to do some little sparkly dots here and there, kind of tucked in the corner of the negative space around my flowers. Just something a little special, and just because I don't want to stop, I just keep adding stuff. I'm going to add a little bit of leaves here, just kind of coming out there from that flower. So I'll do that over there, and I'm going to do it over here onto the black. Okay, so I have this little area of black that is just totally naked. And I've been saving that because I had a little plan to just add in some lettering. These are some lyrics from a song that I just love right now. It says, "How can you not see God?" And then the rest of it goes, "In every little thing, in every little moment." And I just love that song. Oh, and it's by a singer. Her name is Leanna Crawford. And I really like her, so you should go check out her music. I ran out of room there, so I just kind of wrote that in real small. Then I'll add some doodads. So that is going to be it for this piece. I actually have 5 minutes to spare, so I didn't have to speed it up so much sometimes, but I think you guys will forgive me for that, and some of you may be ready for it to be done. But anyways, thank you for watching along. I really hope that that was fun for you. Remember, if you have any questions about my process or the supplies, just leave them in the comments. I'll do my best to keep up with my answers. And give me your feedback on how much yapping you want me to do compared to just letting you watch with some chill music. But anyways, I hope you guys will come back for some more videos. I'll have more stuff for you very soon, and I'll catch you later.